Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba. Today I thought a little bit laterally when I was thinking about a question or a topic to type into Google so that I could answer the questions that popped up, and I basically typed in scuba question, literally just that, into Google and let's see which actual scuba questions pop up. How long is a scuba dive? It really depends on a lot of factors, but most recreational dives tend to be anywhere from around half an hour, 45 minutes, all the way up to 1 hour. It depends on a lot of things, but the limiting factors for scuba diving tends to be your air supply. You only bring down a limited amount of gas unless it's surface supply, but that's quite unusual. Your NDL, which is your no decompression limit, which is basically how long you can stay at that depth, and your body temperature, because even in warm tropical waters, you do start to get cold before long, and you have to get out of the water. A standard size single cylinder that most recreational divers use when you're starting out, you can make that last a good half an hour, quite easy, especially when you're just starting out because you're staying quite shallow. As you start to gain confidence, that will actually start to extend because your breathing rate will start to reduce as you relax into the scuba diving. But to stay down underwater longer, you need to start thinking about bringing more gas with you from either larger or multiple cylinders to take down with you, thicker exposure protection, wetsuits and dry suits to keep you warm, and maybe even different breathing gases inside of those cylinders so that your decompression is less of an issue. But most recreational dives, especially when you're first starting out, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and if you're staying really nice and shallow and you're quite relaxed and zen with your breathing, you can last up to 1 hour quite easily. What happens if I run out of air? This is much less of an issue than a lot of people might think for quite a few different reasons. The first one is that it doesn't just sneak up on you. When you're breathing from a scuba tank, you can actually feel the pressure behind it. When you're breathing, you can feel that pressure behind it. And when the pressure of your cylinder starts to drop below a certain point, you can actually feel it has less oomph behind it when you're inhaling. So you can feel it coming a long way off. And we have a bunch of gauges and transmitters and gadgets and things now that let you know exactly how much air you have inside of your tank. And some of the dive computers and wireless air transmitters nowadays, you can set alarms. So if it gets below a certain point, it beeps at you so you know, oh, I've only got so much air left. However, in the unlikely event that you do just run out of gas, that's exactly what your buddy is there for. As divers, we always dive as a buddy pair so that the two of you are diving together and you both carry 2 second stages, the bit that you breathe from, so that both of you can breathe from a single cylinder and then ascend together safely. There's so much training and procedures in your foundational courses that covers what happens if you run out of gas, and our equipment is all designed to limit gas loss if damaged, to always allow you to breathe. It always lets you breathe as long as possible, even if something awful happens. So it's very, very unusual. And even if it does happen, there's a lot of sort of redundancy in scuba diving. The equipment set up, you've got your buddy right there. It's very rarely an issue. Will there be dangerous marine life? There can be dangerous things in the water, but in most cases of a diver being injured, it's normally the diver's fault. Most marine life would rather swim away from this strange, noisy creature that's blowing bubbles and swims towards it. We're very weird to a lot of fish. They're not used to seeing scuba divers, so their usual response is, I'm gonna swim away from that thing. It's not like Hollywood. Sharks and jellyfish don't have a vendetta towards people. It's actually usually the diver that ends up touching something that they shouldn't, or actually chases after something that they should just leave alone, and that's where negative encounters come from. Yes, there are dangerous things in our oceans, but as long as you give them their space and do your best not to touch anything, then you'll be fine. That's where a lot of injuries occurs, when divers actually end up brushing up against something like fire coral or go to touch something that doesn't want to be touched. And even just, sharp edges when you've got wet hands and wet skin. Your skin's quite delicate when it's saturated. So yes, there is dangerous stuff out there, but nothing you really need to worry about too much. The only thing you need to worry about is not getting in its face and just allow it space to escape. Can I still learn to dive if I don't have a buddy? Yes. Whilst we always dive in a buddy pair, one great thing about scuba diving is that a lot of the procedures and the equipment configurations are very similar all around the world, if not the same. So you can turn up to almost any dive site around the world and buddy up with pretty much anybody. It is worth a quick brush up in case they do something a little bit differently with their equipment configuration or their hand signals. But yeah, you can just go traveling by yourself. I mean, I've done it myself plenty of times. Just go off to a dive site and you're buddied up with someone else who's there by themselves that you've just met, and it's perfectly fine. That's another great thing about our community, is that we all tend to have very similar interests, or at least one similar interest. So it's quite easy to get along with these new people that you've only just met. The same with diving courses. You don't have to sign up as a buddy pair. You can just take the course alone and you'll just be paired up with another student. Do I need to have my own scuba gear? No, not when you're starting out. When you're new to diving, it can be quite nice to have your own mask. It's the bit that, touches your face, so that's quite important. And your mask will follow you throughout most of your diving career. It's one piece of equipment that works for sort of most different types. Even if you sort of progress onto like technical diving, you can usually use the same mask. But all of the gear, except for your swimsuit, obviously, is usually included with your foundational course. So all of your regulators, your BCD, the dive computer and whatnot, we don't expect you to have it in your beginner's course. We'll usually supply that, but of course do check online, make sure that it is supplied and you don't have to rent it and pay extra for it. But on from that, yeah, after you're qualified, you can hire most dive gear in your diving destination. Obviously check ahead of times. So if you only dive every so often, it can work out that, yeah, you can just rent it. But before long, it's a lot nicer and it can end up being a lot cheaper to just invest in your own equipment. And rental kit tends to be hard wearing. For obvious reasons, and it tends to be fairly basic as well. It doesn't have many bells or whistles or creature comforts, and so yeah, it's not always the most comfortable or practical. And it is quite nice to know and understand the dive equipment. So if you have your own dive computer, you know what it's trying to tell you, as opposed to a rental dive computer. It keeps beeping at me and I don't know what this little acronym means. So sometimes it is better to get your own gear, but when to invest in your own gear is very much up to you, and there is a lot out there to choose from. But we usually recommend start off with your mask at least and then progress from there. You don't have to get it all at the beginning. You can just invest in it as you progress. If you have any scuba diving questions, then of course you can pop them down in the comments below, and if you use the Ask Mark hashtag, I might even answer it in next week's Q&A. Remember to like and subscribe, and then of course head over to simplyscuba.com. Thank you for watching everybody, and of course, safe diving.